Hello everybody, welcome to Monday Morning Must-Knows. My name is Merlin Ralph. Here are several things to pay attention to for the upcoming trading week. Now, over last week's trading, most things were pretty flat. The indexes had a lot of volatility, but ended fairly unchanged. Some slightly up, some slightly down. Nothing really exciting except for maybe cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, which had a nice big week. So let's start things off with what we usually look at, which is going to be the earnings calendar. Now, last week we had 790 something. This week, only 771, but there are a couple big names in here and one monstrous, gigantic name, the third largest company in the United States now, overtaking Google and Amazon. Shockingly, we'll talk about that one here in just a second. So let's look at our earnings calendar. Again, 771 companies reporting. We start things off on Monday with Arista Networks, Cadence Design Systems, and Waste Management. Tuesday brings you Walmart, Home Depot, BHP, Palo Alto Networks, and Medtronic. Wednesday brings you Nvidia. This one, my friends, is going to be the big daddy. Why? Well, it just overtook Google, just overtook Amazon as far as market capitalization. It's only got Apple and Microsoft left to overtake and become the biggest company in the United States. And a lot of people just riding that wave of hope, of optimism for AI, artificial intelligence, chips, and of course, Nvidia leading the way. But competition's coming. So we see this parabolic move up in Nvidia. Will it hold? The big question is, how is earnings going to react with this market? We do know that if they have phenomenal earnings, it could launch the market higher. It could also crater this market if things don't look very rosy for Nvidia, and it's all driven off of hype and expectation. So something to keep track of. It's going to happen Wednesday after market close. So one of the most important pieces this year so far. You also have ADI, which is Analog Devices. Moving on to Thursday, you've got Intuit and Booking.com. And finally, Warren Buffett with Berkshire Hathaway reporting earnings on Friday. So you have quite a lot of stuff to think about with regards to earnings. Of course, Wednesday is what it's all about with Nvidia, and that will impact Thursday and Friday. Remember, that's happening after market close on Wednesday, so nothing to worry about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but all eyes on Nvidia this week. Now, let's go back to something that is going to be more of a global impacting piece, and that's going to be services and manufacturing numbers. We saw last week the Empire State manufacturing numbers looking much better. Same with the Philly, better than expected. Well, what does it look like for the U.S. as a whole? Well, we'll find out later in the day on Thursday, but we start things off across the pond. You see here we have France at 3:15 a.m. Eastern Time, followed very closely by Germany at 3:30. Then at 4 a.m. Eastern Time, you have the EU reporting their services and manufacturing numbers, followed up by England at 4:30 a.m., and then we bring it home to the United States with a 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time review. Now, this is going to happen 15 minutes into the trading session, so keep that in mind. This, while it's usually not a huge market mover, there is more of an emphasis being put on manufacturing, specifically because some of its numbers relating to GDP and how it's impacting GDP in the previous reading. So keep your eye on those numbers. And lastly, the quick Monday morning must-knows here today. Lastly, it's about Jerome Powell and the FOMC. Now, as we know, we have had all eyes focus on the FOMC, on rate statements. Are they going to start cutting rates? All the expectations were set very high that we're going to see so many rate cuts this year. And Jerome Powell and other FOMC members have been going, no, we're probably going to hold off. We're probably going to hold off. And that inflation number that we got last week, a bit higher with CPI and PPI numbers, has people going, uh-oh, maybe the Fed is going to keep rates right where they're at. And if inflation does continue to tick up because we're seeing commodity prices surge, well, maybe we might even get rate increases. So you're getting a lot of speculation about what's going to happen. Now, why is it important with this graphic here? Well, this is showing the FOMC meeting minutes, meaning a bunch of FOMC members will be sitting around. Well, they've already sat around. They're going to disclose the recordings and documentation of what they talked about at that meeting. Now, Jerome Powell has been very clear. His press conferences, I feel, have been very open and transparent. But I think that the FOMC meeting represents a look behind the curtain. We may be getting summarized opinions from Jerome Powell. This is the actual documentation of which member feels we should be raising, lowering, keeping the same. What are the areas of concern for these FOMC members going forward? And that may start to dictate the way that these markets behave, at least the expectation on the parts of traders. So the FOMC meeting minutes is actually a fairly important one, and it's going to happen, as you see here, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's near the tail end of the trading session. That's not going to be in the early morning part. That's the last 2 hours of the day. Now, this is one of those things that when it's released, the institutions and the big traders are just scouring through it as quickly as possible. Who knows, maybe even using AI programs at this point to see if there's any discrepancies, any little juicy nugget of maybe foresight that any FOMC member has stated that may impact rate decisions and money supply going forward. So a very interesting day to be sure. Really, this week is going to be all about Nvidia. That's going to be the most popular thing for the week. I think that's going to be a monster market mover, but there's still some things with regards to services, manufacturing data to pay attention to, and of course the FOMC meeting minutes. That, my friends, is your Monday morning must-knows. We'll see you next week.